of Congress agree with the administration's call for greater engagement with the Asia-Pacific region to stimulate closer integration among our allies and partners to promote democracy and rule of law. Congress must play an important role in this conversation, and it is imperative, especially in light of our continuing fiscal challenges, that U.S. investment in the region be both effective and efficient. Clearly, the Asia-Pacific region faces enormous challenges. In a speech given earlier this month, Secretary of Defense Ash Carter outlined the 5 main challenges that the United States faces today. 2 of them are situated in the Asia-Pacific. The continued provocations of North Korea's rogue regime and the threat that the South China Sea, one of the world's busiest waterways, could be militarized. Secretary Carter went on to describe the region as the single most consequential region of the world for America's future. On North Korea, I commend Chairman Royce's leadership in increasing sanctions on this rogue regime. I was proud to join him in that effort, and now I'm eager to see the implementation of this important new law. China's actions in the South China Sea continue to raise the risk of conflict while simultaneously jeopardizing international rights, freedoms, and order. As China continues its alarming trend of militarizing the South China Sea, the United States must be firm in its resolve to support international norms. While I support the freedom of navigation exercises recently conducted by the U.S. Navy, I'd like to see even more strategic clarity from the administration on the issue of the South China Sea to ensure international norms and the rule of law are followed. Resourcing diplomatic and development responses to such challenges can be especially difficult in the region because strategic priorities do not always map directly to budget priorities. We must work closely with our regional partners who continue calls for our assistance on issues like the South China Sea through programs such as the 5-year Southeast Asian Maritime Security Initiative, which seeks to foster regional stability by improving the maritime capabilities of our partners. I hope to hear from our panel more about this initiative and others specific to the South China Sea conflict. The region faces a plethora of additional challenges, from the growing threat of radical Islamist terrorist organizations and the influence of ISIS, to the difficulty of establishing a region-wide system of trade rules that are free, fair, and uphold high standards. Our trade agreements help strengthen institutions and the rule of law while deepening our ties with our trading partners and regional allies. I continue to support the Trans-Pacific Partnership and believe it will ultimately assist in regional economic trade activity, heighten regional trade standards, and promote increased economic growth for both the U.S. and our trade partners. I was recently at a symposium put on by the McCain Institute in Sedona, Arizona, and James Clapper was there. And I remember him saying that TPP is probably worth 3 aircraft carrier, or is the equivalent of 3 aircraft carrier. I'm interested in hearing the panel's thoughts on utilizing development assistance funding to bring non-TPP members closer to TPP standards. We were also in Indonesia, and they're interested in a second round. The president, in meeting with President Obama in January, identified that they'd like to be part of a second round. Philippines is very, very interested. Taiwan. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out, but I think all of them are looking with great anticipation for this to finally be ratified and move on and see other opportunities arise in the days and years to come. And today we're going to discuss the many challenges and opportunities we face in the region and the administration's commitment to the rebalance in the context of the fiscal year 2017 budget request for East Asia and Pacific region. Given the heightened challenges in the region, the United States must fully commit to increasing integration amongst our allies and partners and continuing to promote peace and democracy. Making sure we understand these missions from a place of organization, efficiency, and effectiveness is equally important. So I'm really grateful for our witnesses' willingness to join us today. And I'd like to recognize Mr. Sherman for any comments he might have.
Thank you. We can all agree on the importance of the East Asia Pacific region. It's a diverse and dynamic region. We've seen significant progress there politically. We've seen democracy in Burma or Myanmar move forward. But keep in mind, democracy is not touted as a system that necessarily protects minority rights. And the Rohingya continue to suffer, whether it is from the military or even from some of the democratic leaders in Myanmar, Burma. The economic progress has been more than significant. World Bank says extreme poverty in the region has dropped from 29% in 2002 to 4% in 2014. While we all agree that the region is important, I think we're going down the wrong path, because we're being war hawks about some islets that remain uninhabited to this day. That's how useless they are. And we're incredibly doves when it comes to jobs for the American people. You would think that the American government might have lost touch with the citizens it claims to represent, which I think is obvious to anyone looking at our current political system. Looking first at these maritime disputes, we have to be careful about how we deploy our limited resources. Pivot to Asia should mean we send a trade delegation to Tokyo to say we've got to deal with this trade deficit, rather than sending aircraft carriers to defend islets for Japan that they are unwilling to defend at their own cost. Let's look at these islets. There's no oil. If there was any oil, it's not our oil. And the countries who say that it would be their oil are unwilling to increase their defense budgets, but are banking on their ability to redirect our defense budget, because while our defense budget may not increase, our allocation of it to protect their islets, which have their oil but there is no oil, is their best investment. Japan, for example, continues to have a 1% GDP ceiling on what they spend for their own defense. And the chairman brings up the trade agreement, as our witnesses do in their opening statement. This is a trade agreement so manifestly against American interests that everyone running for president swears they're against it, even those who may think otherwise. The American people will see this agreement become law only through chicanery and trickery, like ratification during a lame duck session. I hope that we can put enough light on this so that we get not only ask candidates for president where do they stand on it, but we get a clear statement from every candidate for president. Will they withdraw from it if chicanery is used to ratify it during the month of December of this year? Why is this agreement is so terrible for American working families that it's being sold as good national security policy? Suffer for your country needs you. This is terrible national security policy. First, it is a Trojan horse for China to bring its imports into the United States. Goods that are admitted to be 60% made in China, in reality 80 or 90% made in China, get fast-tracked in the United States with no supervision and no tariff. A one-way free trade agreement for China. Second, this deal puts the U.S. government stamp of approval on the idea that trade agreements don't control currency manipulation. So the idea that we should be so proud that we wrote the rules, no, these are Wall Street's rules that have mutilated the American middle class. We shouldn't be proud for passing them, and didn't even have to show up for the negotiations. And the key thing, the most important part of this agreement, is the part that's not in it. Nothing on currency manipulation. As to North Korea, We clearly have a problem. What worries me most is that North Korea will sell fissile material or a nuclear weapon. In 2007, Israel destroyed a nuclear facility, a nuclear bomb facility in Syria. What is less well known is that that was all North Korean equipment and technology. North Korea was only willing to sell technology and equipment in 2007 because they didn't have very many weapons and they needed nuclear weapons in their own belief to defend themselves from us. They now have 12 nuclear weapons. They'll be developing 3 a year, or at least enough fissile material for 3 a year. I don't know whether the next one goes on eBay, but I do know that the amount North Korea would demand would exceed the resources of ISIS or any other terrorist non-state actor. But Iran and other state actors would have enough money to really interest the North Koreans. Finally, as Washington warned us, we have to avoid the tendency of many countries to go looking for dragons to slay. Funny that he used the term dragon. Looking for enemies we don't need. China has domestic political problems, so they fan nationalism over islets. We do the same thing, perhaps for our own political reasons. We're told that these islets, for example, sit astride trade routes involving hundreds of billions of dollars of trade. Yes, it's all trade in and out of Chinese ports, and if China had military control of these islands, they could blockade their own ports. So we exaggerate the importance of these islets in order to meet domestic political needs. What the Pentagon needs politically most is a worthy adversary. They don't like focusing their attention on non-uniformed, asymmetrical opponents. China offers the only hope of a worthy, uniformed opponent. We don't need another opponent. We need to calm down and realize these islets are islets that remained uninhabited even though they're off the coast of the most populated continent for a reason. And I realize that our hearing today is about the State Department and USAID budget, but the Pentagon budget follows foreign policy, or at least it should. And that is the big budget we've got to worry about. I yield back.
We're grateful to be joined today by Assistant Secretary Daniel Russell of the Department of the State's Bureau of East Asia and Pacific Affairs and Assistant Administrator Jonathan Stivers of the U.S. Agency for International Development Bureau for Asia. And we're thankful to these witnesses for sharing their time with us today. And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Russell, and then Mr. Stivers when he's concluded. Thank you.
Well, Chairman Salmon, Ranking Member Sherman, members of the subcommittee, thanks very much for your leadership in supporting the strong U.S. relations with the East Asia and Pacific region. Thank you also for the opportunity to testify today about our progress in the rebalance and the relevance of the President's 2017 budget request. And Mr. Chairman, let me in particular thank you for your tremendous leadership of this subcommittee and your strong support for our engagement in the Asia-Pacific. You'll be sorely missed in FY17 when this budget is realized. This is also the last budget for President Obama, and so I'd like to start with just a quick recap of what we think we have accomplished with your support over the last 7 years, and the foundation that we think that we can lay through this budget for the next administration. First, since security starts with friends, we modernized our long-standing treaty alliances with Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the Philippines. And we forged new security partnerships at the same time that we developed existing ones with partners like Singapore and New Zealand. This makes us much more effective in addressing both conventional security threats, but also other threats such as countering violent extremism, blocking the flow of foreign terrorist fighters, preventing human trafficking and other transnational crimes. Second, to create jobs at home and to secure our standing in the region, we stepped up economic engagement, concluding the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement, revitalizing APEC, pursuing a new bilateral investment treaty with China, and most important, negotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a new kind of economic agreement that sets high standards for protecting workers and the environment, while at the same time supporting job-creating small businesses and an open internet. Third, we've helped build up the region's institutions and support rule of law and peaceful dispute resolution. Our investments in ASEAN and the region-wide East Asia Summit have renewed confidence in American leadership and strengthened the region's ability to deal with tensions like those in the South China Sea. Fourth, we've engaged intensely with China, investing the time to get to know its leaders, to advance cooperation, and to put a floor under the relationship so that it can withstand tensions. While serious concerns in areas like human rights and China's behavior with regard to maritime disputes with its neighbors remain, we have worked towards cooperative engagement on areas like cyber security, on shared proliferation concerns with Iran and North Korea, on global health, on climate change, and others. Fifth, we've upgraded relations with emerging partners like Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam. We've importantly supported the democratic transition in Burma and promoted democracy, good governance, and universal values and human rights as an essential element of our policy. The support and the funding provided by Congress has, of course, been essential. And the $1.57 billion East Asia Pacific request for 2017 builds on these accomplishments, including by addressing maritime security concerns and promoting economic opportunities. The $873 million in foreign assistance request supports and expands on our objectives of regional security cooperation, advancing economic growth and trade, promoting democratic development, strengthening regional institutions, as well as addressing war legacies. The other $646 million provides essential increased funding for personnel, operations, and public diplomacy to meet growing demands driven by the rebalance. Now, contested maritime claims in Southeast Asia and destabilizing actions such as Chinese land reclamation, construction, and militarization of disputed areas make it harder for countries in the region to resolve disagreements peacefully. And lack of maritime domain awareness also encourages trafficking, piracy, and illegal fishing. So the President's 2017 budget request will support our work with regional partners to build their capacity to maintain free and open access to the maritime domain through enhanced maritime security capabilities and maritime domain awareness. So thank you very much, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Mr. Stivers.
Chairman Salmon, Ranking Member Sherman, distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the invitation to testify today on the role of USAID in advancing U.S. foreign policy priorities in East Asia and the Pacific. President Obama's budget request for the East Asia Pacific region is $873 million. That's a 12% increase over FY15. This request is in recognition that America's security and prosperity are inextricably tied to the region, and it enables us to consolidate our gains and strengthen the Asia-Pacific rebalance policy. In the coming years, the countries of this region are expected to continue high growth rates and play an increasingly pivotal role in world affairs. But just how this region's development and economic growth takes shape is critical to our own future. Already home to a majority of humanity, by 2030, Asia is projected to add more people than any other region, putting unprecedented pressure on to provide access for energy, clean water, food, quality education, and healthcare. But despite the impressive gains of the region, they continue to grapple with ever more complex development challenges, including severe economic disparities, food scarcity, urbanization, poor governance, and suffocating pollution and environmental degradation. Human trafficking continues to be an enormous problem, and an unacceptable proportion of women in the region continue to experience gender-based violence. At USAID, our mission is to end extreme poverty and promote resilient, democratic societies while advancing our security and prosperity. At its core, the Asia-Pacific rebalance is about strengthening our relationships, not only with countries, but more specifically with the people of the region in an effort to improve their lives. We employ three primary approaches. First, we're pioneering a new model of development that focuses on maximizing our impact and our funding through public-private partnerships, science, innovation, and regional solutions. Second, we're building pathways out of poverty through global health, Feed the Future, and global climate change. And last, we're empowering reformers to improve democratic governance and human rights. And for this reason, this budget request includes significant increases in democratic governance and human rights in almost every country in the region. Next, a brief overview of the key countries. In Burma, the November elections resulted in the first civilian-led government in more than 50 years. USAID was proud to be the lead donor, providing $18 million in support of the election, including incorporating international standards in the election procedures, training poll workers, political parties, election observers, voter education, and supporting more than 300 civil society organizations. We helped digitize 33 million names from scratch into the voter list in a country with few computers and hundreds of dialects. We know that democracy is about more than just elections, though, which is why our support for this next phase of the democratic transition is so important. The people of Burma have high expectations and low capacity to deal with the challenges on almost every front. The government has prioritized issues such as national reconciliation, reform of the political power structures, economic growth, agricultural development, and healthcare. USAID will continue our strong support for the people of Burma on each of these priorities through our budget request. We remain deeply concerned about the humanitarian and human rights situation in Rakhine State, and USAID continues to support vulnerable populations throughout the country, including the Rohingya. In Cambodia, our primary goal is supporting and transitioning to a democracy that respects human rights. Civil society, while not fully respected there, has grown in vibrancy and strength in recent years, thanks in part to our assistance. On food security, our Feed the Future initiative has helped increase yields and drive down malnutritional stunting in children under 5 by 21% in the areas where we work. Indonesia's continued progress and democratic system set an example for its neighbors, but the country faces major governance, economic, and security challenges that could undermine its young democracy. Our anti-corruption investments have resulted in increased prosecution, and the country's ranking on the Transparency International's Corruption Index has improved by 30 spots. On health, we've helped Indonesia become polio-free, and last year's devastating forest and peat fires cost the country over $16 billion. We partnered with the U.S. Foreign Service to send forest specialists, but we know that prevention is the key to solving this challenge. USAID is supporting something called the Indonesia Palm Oil Pledge, which is an innovative commitment by the world's leading palm oil producers to transition to sustainable production. In the Philippines, our Partnership for Growth initiative has helped address the main impediments to inclusive and sustainable growth. The results have been striking. Philippines has emerged as one of the fastest growing economies and a more reliable trade and investment partner. And for the first time, the country received investment-grade sovereign debt ratings from 3 of the world's leading credit agencies. Yet, lack of formal access to land is a key driver of poverty, a driver of conflict, and an obstacle to national development. In Vietnam, USAID supports the implementation of reforms critical to potential TPP participation, including launching a new labor program this year that will support the rights of workers and improve working conditions. In addition, USAID is focused on addressing war legacies, health and disabilities, and reducing susceptibility to climate change and natural disasters. Mr. Chairman, Committee, in an interconnected world, development plays an indispensable role alongside defense and diplomacy in advancing our security and prosperity. While we must focus on immediate crises throughout the world, it is also essential that we address the root causes of poverty, conflict, and instability to help shape a better future for humanity. That is the heart of our work in the East Asia Pacific region. Thank you, and I look forward to your counsel and questions.
Thank you very much. Just give you a heads up, we could be getting buzzed for a vote any time now, anytime between 25 past till 20 till. So we're going to be up here on pins and needles. Mr. Russell, I completely support 100% the administration's stated goal of a rebalance to Asia. In fact, when I look at the priorities that you've outlined in your speech, I didn't really find anything that gave me pause. I support everything that you said, 100%. And Mr. Stivers, the same goes for you. And as I've gone throughout the region, and I've met with your personnel, both of you, I'm so impressed and so amazed at how much they accomplish with the resources that they have. And I guess that leads to my question. I mentioned that in my opening statement, that while we've identified Asia as one of the most important priorities on the globe for this administration and for us as a country. It still remains pretty low as far as the resources. Out of the 6 regions, it's second from the bottom. What's it going to take for us to be able to get the resources completely necessary? I know some of the embassies that I've gone to seem like they have just about everything they need, but some of those embassies that I've been to, they need more than they've got. I mean, they don't have all the resources that they need. And again, I want to state for the record that your folks are some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life, incredible leaders. And the ranking member mentioned kind of a nexus, if you will, between DOD and what you do with State Department and USAID. I believe that what you all do is keep us out of war. And it's probably, for less than 1% of the total budget, the job that you do is incredibly worth what we commit to it. But are we giving the resources necessary for this region? And if not, how do we get there? Mr. Russell.
Well, Mr. Chairman, first of all, thank you very much for your heartfelt and kind words. And in particular, thank you for your personal travel to the East Asian Pacific region. That really makes a big difference, not only to your understanding and Congress's understanding of the issues, but to our folks. So we thank you for that. Thank you also for your comments about the men and women who staff our embassies in East Asia and Pacific region. We're in the people business. And as a bureau, we've made it a point of pride to seek out and attract and to develop the best people in the Foreign Service community. We have, throughout the lifespan of this administration, consistently sought to fund the rebalance. We have sought and prioritized funding, and our foreign assistance budget, as Mr. Stivers mentioned, is up about 12%. Our overall budget compared to FY15 is up about 11%. We've also deepened our collaboration and coordination with partners, industrialized nations in the region in particular, such as Japan, the Republic of Korea, Australia, and outside the region like the EU, in order to try to leverage our collaborative efforts to promote our agendas. It's quite true that other regions may have more trouble, more crises, and more countries, and that accounts for some of the disparity between the region. But like you, I'd argue that we have by far and away the best people.
Mr. Stivers.
Thank you, thank you. This FY17 request, if adopted, we think would better accomplish a lot of our goals. We think it's appropriate considering the crises all over the world and the budget environment that we're in. But we are doing our part to become more efficient, to leverage the private sector more, to work with our allies who have similar interests, Australia, Japan, the Asian Development Bank. And just a word on our people in the field, our AID missions. I mean, they're working in some of the poorest villages, helping sick families, with our partners, hungry children, education. They're going into these villages with their From the American People USAID hat to really represent the best in American values and deeds. And that engagement with the people, despite disagreements we may have with governments, is really important in terms of strengthening what we believe in as Americans.
Mr. Sherman, yield to you.
I can't possibly match the chairman's level of niceness. I will comment, however, that I have and will continue to vote for the higher levels of tax revenue that will be necessary if we're actually going to be spending the money that you've recommended to us and that you would recommend to us if the resources were available. I see that we're providing significant aid to Myanmar, Burma. How much of that is going to help the Rohingya and other ethnic minorities?
Thank you, Mr. Sherman, for that question and for your attention to the plight of the Rohingya in the region. It certainly is a human rights and humanitarian crisis there. Last year, we provided $85 million in food aid, life-saving humanitarian assistance to vulnerable populations within the country of Burma, of which Rakhine State and the Rohingya received a significant amount of that. In addition, we support civil society, voices of tolerance in terms of trying to get at some of the root causes of the disagreements and the conflict between the different groups.
I note that our aid to Vietnam will include almost $22 million to help them participate in the TPP. What will that money be spent on?
Thank you for that. Certainly, you know, the rule of law, human rights, labor are all issues that hold us back from a more robust partnership there. And whatever your position is,
But if they don't get the money, are they going to be in compliance?
well, whatever your position is on the TPP,
Right.
we believe that getting Vietnam or any country to achieve high standards on trade to better promote U.S. exports on the environment, labor, state-owned enterprises, IPR, anything we do to increase
will
the
this money
standards would
be
be
spent
better.
to help their exporters comply with standards to export to the United States? Or will it be spent to help our exporters import to Vietnam? How would you spend
This is
$21.75 million to help us export to Vietnam?
This is technical assistance, rule of law assistance that we provide to help show them and show them how to better comply with these agreements. And certainly, you know, there's many aspects of TPP, of which market access and exports is one of them.
I'll just point out to go to my district and say, you're going to have to compete on a level playing field with 60 cent an hour labor, with places where if people organize unions, the party just plants drugs on them and arrests them, claims they're drug dealers, and that we have to spend $22 million in order to help them sell us stuff for 60 cents.
We hope to improve the conditions.
It'll help, yes. And we'll be dealing with the budget before we deal with TPP. So if we're not members of TPP, would this money still be spent, or would you reprogram it?
This assistance is important regardless of TPP. Again, it's high trade standards that we want the country to adhere to. So regardless of if TPP moves forward or not, I think it's important that Vietnam has as high standards as possible, and that's what we're helping them do.
State and DRL have declined to pursue distributing physical media such as hard drives and CDs to North Korea because of the risk to our partners. What can we do to get information and make it accessible to the people of North Korea? Mr. Russell?
Well, Congressman, we are working to try to improve access to international information to the North Korean people. It is quite true that possession of CDs or thumb drives is a punishable offense in the DPRK, and we are concerned about not putting either third parties or the North Korean people themselves at immediate physical risk. Nevertheless, the North Korean people are benefiting from a range of programs, including Radio Free Asia and the work that we're doing together with the Republic of Korea.
I point out that all over the world, we help people who want to risk their lives to make their countries better. Congress has said, for example, that we're going to provide weapons to the right Syrian forces. And so we don't fail to provide those weapons on the theory that whoever uses them will expose themselves to danger. It seems like you're saying we won't provide the thumb drives in northern China to patriotic North Koreans who are willing to risk their lives and bring them into North Korea. Is there a reason why we're unwilling to help these patriotic North Koreans?
We work to provide access to information for the North Korean people directly and with our partners in the ROK.
Hope we do thumb drives as well. Thanks.
Short question from Mr. Brooks.
I hope it will be short. I'm looking at what committee staff has given me, and tell me if I've got it correct, that this hearing does not include anything in the Near East, but whether it's limited to East Asia and the Pacific. That's correct. And according to committee staff notes, the fiscal year 2017 budget request increases funding for East Asia and the Pacific 11.9%. Is that accurate?
Foreign assistance budget. That's correct, sir.
And you're familiar with the financial condition of Puerto Rico right now and how that's a major issue on Capitol Hill?
I'm aware of it through
Of the existence of it. And you need to turn on your microphone. I'm not sure if it's hitting the record very well. Well, Puerto Rico, by way of example, has a debt that is unpaid at risk of default that averages out to $20,000 per Puerto Rico resident, $20,000 apiece. In contrast, America's per capita debt approximates $60,000. Again, $60,000 per person for the United States. We're looking at what's happening in Puerto Rico when it's $20,000. And my question is, with this kind of increase that you want to spend in faraway lands, where America seems to be on a path to insolvency and bankruptcy, without the will in Congress or in the White House to be financially responsible and properly manage our resources, what can you tell the constituents of my district, Alabama's 5th Congressional District, that would help convince them that this is a worthwhile expenditure given the rather precarious financial condition that their country is in and the increasing risk that America is going to suffer from a debilitating insolvency and bankruptcy?
Congressman, my answer would be that the East Asia and Pacific region is a larger export market for U.S. exports than Europe is, than Canada or Mexico is. And
Are you suggesting we have to pay them money to get them to buy our products?
Our strategy is to invest in U.S. national interest. And the U.S. has a national interest in tethering itself to the most dynamic economic growth region on planet Earth, East Asia and the Pacific. We derive phenomenal benefits, not only in economic and commercial terms, but also in security and other aspects from our sustained investment in the Asia-Pacific region.
So it's, as I understand it, your whole argument is based on potential trade arrangements with these nations.
No, Congressman, I think that there is a compelling case for why the U.S. national interest, both economic and security, rests in intensified engagement with the Asia-Pacific region. This is a part of the world that is demographically growing at an extraordinary rate, that is a major consumer of American products, that is receptive and attracted to the American brand, that is moving steadily in the direction of universal values that America has championed.
Right, Mr. Russell, I appreciate your insight. I apologize for having to cut you off, but I can sense some antsy congressmen because we've had votes called and we're nearing the point where we will miss the votes and we've got to go over to the United States Capitol and the House floor in order to cast those votes. If you want to add anything when we resume, that'll be great. Unfortunately, I won't be here because I have other hearings. I've got a Strat Forces Subcommittee and other things that are coming up that I'll have to attend to after votes. But thank you for your insight.
And we'll reconvene after the vote on the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I promise I'm just going to take 1 minute
Fire away.
because I can't come back.
Okay.
I thank the chair. I just want to say to my friend from Alabama with whom I recently traveled to China, I can tell you that my constituents would answer his question. We need to be engaged. This is a very important part of the world where we cannot afford to retreat and withdraw. And it is always a false choice to say to us, we can either afford domestic investment or foreign aid, but not both. I mean, it sounds good, but we're talking about less than 1% of the United States budget, and it is a tool that helps us avoid military engagement, and that can be have long-term return on it. So it's an investment worth making if the United States is going to live up to its responsibilities as an engaged world power. I thank the chair.
And you
Amen.
do have bipartisan agreement here on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Convene after the vote.
Thank
you. Do we reconvene?
Yeah, I'll come back.
Oh, I don't know if I can come back because I
can,
got
you
TNT.
can.
Okay.
We'll reconvene this hearing. Mr. Russell, Mr. Stivers, I wanted to give you a chance to maybe respond to the last question. Why is resources for the State Department in general, why is it important? And you got a little bit of a chance to answer that. The other thing I really wanted to focus on, Ranking Member spoke about these rocks and uninhabited islands that are totally unimportant, and maybe you could tell us why they are important. I'll give you a chance on both of those.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The U.S. is a Pacific nation, and our future is inextricably intertwined with the growth of the Pacific region. The good news is that both for demographic and for economic reasons, the trend lines are by and large good in Asia. Poverty has diminished dramatically. GDP, economic growth, internet penetration, education, women's rights, human rights, civil rights. There are some very, very positive trends and developments, much of which can be attributed, I believe, to the leadership exercised by the United States in championing universal rights, but also in providing a security climate that allows for that economic growth. And the stability and the security of the Pacific region is a vital U.S. national interest. It is not a luxury item. And we would, as you pointed out, ignore it at our peril because this is the ounce of prevention that spares us the many pounds of cure that would be required to try to influence events if we weren't present in a credible and influential way. The economic and the security pieces go hand in hand with what our companies do. I've discovered from traveling in the region again and again that the American brand is very much a function of the way that our companies operate with respect for rules and investment in growing people and in fairness. We're giving people in the Asia-Pacific region hope. We're giving them opportunity, and they are repaying us with good governance and open markets. It's a bargain.
I'll just interject, I get to see that firsthand. You know, what's interesting is we wring our hands every year over this discretionary budget. I just might point out that we could zero out all discretionary spending, all your funding for State Department, USAID, national parks, transportation, military. We could zero it all out, and we'd still have a heck of a deficit going. And that's because this place never really talks about the one place where if we made some changes actually would probably get us closer to a balanced budget, and that's dealing with our non-discretionary accounts or our mandatory spending. And those areas eclipse everything. And in a few years, if Congress, I'm leaving, but if Congress continues to put its head in the sand on dealing with entitlement spending and not doing anything about it, there won't be any money for discretionary spending. So we've got, this is money well spent. And I'm anything but a big spender, and anybody who knows me knows that. But this is money that is incredibly well spent, and that's why I hounded you a little bit about even, you know, focusing more resources on the region, because it's so critical to our livelihood, to our domestic policy as far as jobs, and to our national and international security. Mr. Stivers?
Thank you for the chance to answer that question. We live in an interconnected world right now, and it's getting smaller and smaller. And East Asia is not a faraway land; it's right here. In terms of our security and stability, we know infectious disease knows no borders. If we don't try to work on these issues, that's where the avian flu came from. In terms of Southeast Asia, it's essential that we're engaged on these issues. Corruption, we know some of the drivers of violent extremism, denial of civil liberties, harsh authoritarian rule, corruption, impunity. If we don't help these countries and these reformers in these countries try to address those issues, those are really the root causes of some of the problems that we're having globally, and that also that affect us here in the United States. And certainly our values of democracy and human rights are absolutely essential to our work and our foreign assistance. And we don't believe that certainly 1% of our, less than 1% of our U.S. budget going to work on development and work with our allies is too much to provide.
Let me just ask a follow-up question. Nothing is, is static. Nothing stays the same forever. And when, if our leadership from the region evaporates, what could potentially happen?
Mr. Chairman, there is a tremendous hunger in the Asia-Pacific region for sustained and continued U.S. presence and U.S. leadership because the stability and the predictability that we have provided over the last six plus decades has enabled citizens in the region to build the kind of life that citizens everywhere seek. I think that with respect to the question that the ranking member asked about the South China Sea, the answer lies in one word: rules. It's not about the rocks, it's about the rules. And we profit when we live in a rules-based world. We suffer, and I would add, we will spend 100-fold in seeking to claw back the space in which we can exercise our rights if we let it slip through our fingers, if we don't continue that investment. Building a rules-based system in the Asia-Pacific region benefits the United States in a very direct way. And whether it is with respect to security and the peaceful resolution of maritime disputes, ensuring that the rules apply equally to big countries and to small, or whether it's with respect to trade. TPP, of course, we believe should be ratified by the U.S. Congress, not only because of the issues of U.S. credibility, but because it's such an important strategic opportunity. 40% of global GDP is represented by the 12 partner countries. We're looking at the majority of the world's middle-class consumers living and working in the Asia-Pacific region in just a matter of a few years. Whether or not we operate in a transparent, high-standard, rules-based environment in the Asia-Pacific is going to be a determinant of whether the American people benefit and whether the American economy flourishes or not.
I just want to have one last question. I know I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago I attended a international summit held by the McCain Institute, and many of the speakers expressed grave concerns about the fact that on these islands that have really no value, as was mentioned, or at least by the ranking member, if they have no value, then why is China building runways on them? Why is China putting radar on them? Why is China putting weapons on them? It is a reason. It's causing our allies in the region great concern. I think it's about rule of law, but I think it's also about boundaries that have to be clear for any civilization. And I guess it does get back to rules, rules that have been in place for a long time. And if we, as the one free beacon of liberty and hope, can't stand to protect and secure a rule of law, then I don't know what we're here for. Last week, Defense Secretary Ash Carter visited an American aircraft carrier while it was sailing in the South China Sea. the second time he's made such a visit. And it highlighted once again this tension. And there are U.S. national security concerns. How does this year's budget request complement and operationalize the response to these tensions within state and or USAID? And how does state and USAID's efforts complement DoD's response and our FONOPS?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we have an FMF request in the order of $85.5 million that provides for funding for a variety of maritime security initiatives and improvements among our partners and our allies. Much of this is oriented at capacity building and maritime domain awareness. The coastal countries in the South China Sea want and need to have the ability to monitor what's transpiring in their environs, in their territorial waters, and in their EEZs. And frankly, seeing what's going on is helpful in avoiding crises and avoiding incidents and accidents. We're supporting their efforts also with an eye towards their ability to respond to disasters and humanitarian assistance given the number of climactic incidents and typhoons and so on. The goal, as you alluded to, Mr. Chairman, is not to create an advantage for one claimant over another. We have no interest in that, and that's not what we're about. What we're seeking to do is to ensure that the countries adhere peacefully to the rule of law, and importantly, take no actions to abridge universal rights and international legal principles like freedom of navigation, freedom of overflight, unimpeded lawful commerce. That's a U.S. interest. It's a universal interest and a universal right that mustn't be abridged. That was the rationale behind the visits by Secretary Carter. The FMF programs that we are putting forward in our request directly complement the Department of Defense's Maritime Security Initiative. We consult and cooperate closely and anticipate that we'll be able to ensure that the two programs dovetail as we move forward.
For whatever it's worth, and then I'll close my question and yield to the ranking member, but for whatever it's worth, I think that there needs to really be, I think, a stepped up effort on behalf of all of us to reach out to the ASEAN folks to be more of a voice of clarity on these issues in the region. And I think that the more we speak in unison with some of the international bodies associated with this issue, I think that the more that we'll find success. Because I truly do think China is just testing, kind of testing its boundaries. And I really believe that the more clarity we provide, the more we're able to avoid any kind of a conflict. You want to comment on that?
Well, the U.S. engages directly with the 10 members of ASEAN. Of course, we also engage with China and other neighbors in the region through a series of platforms, the preeminent one being the East Asia Forum. President Obama has made it a point through his presidency to attend on an annual basis, and he importantly hosted the 10 leaders of ASEAN in February in an informal summit in California, which allowed for a day and a half of in-depth conversation on a range of economic and security issues. One thing that came through loud and clear is the shared conviction among all the leaders that the economic imperative to promote and sustain stability in the Asia-Pacific region is a common responsibility. We discussed things that each country, both claimant countries and non-claimant countries, can do. We also discussed the importance of direct engagement and dialogue with China. President Obama met with President Xi Jinping on March 31st here in Washington on the margins of the Nuclear Security Summit and had a very, very direct discussion of our concerns and our interests with respect to the South China Sea. We still have a long way to go. The pattern of behavior by Chinese forces and actors remains troubling, but I believe that we have a real dialogue with the Chinese and that they have heard us loud and clear.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman.
Thank you. Mr. Stivers, I see we're reducing our aid to Mongolia. Any particular reason?
Well, thank you for that. Mongolia is a middle-income country. They've also have they had a MCC compact, which was $285 million over 5 years to address constraints of growth that I believe it's coming to a conclusion. We have a small democracy and governance youth program there, but we believe that's an appropriate footprint considering our other challenges in the region.
Chairman of our full committee had field hearings in Los Angeles, as you remember, to focus on the rule of law in the Philippines and particularly the seizures of land by politically connected individuals. Mr. Russell, have you followed up on that? And can you report to us that the abuses we learned about in that hearing have been at least partially addressed by the Philippine government?
Well, we continue to engage on an ongoing basis with the national and the local authorities in the Philippines on a range of good governance programs, and I'm sure Mr. Stivers can build them out. We think that the Philippines has made progress under the leadership of President Aquino in strengthening the rule of law through the Philippines, but we still see a considerable amount of work yet to be done.
I hope you deal with the chairman's staff on that and see if we can be specific, because there were specific items brought to our attention in that field hearing. Mr. Stivers.
Thank you. Thank you for the chance to certainly Chairman Royce has just been a champion on this issue. But land rights is one of the, if not the, one of the top priorities, if not the top priority of people in the Philippines, Cambodia, Burma, Indonesia. It rises to the top of any poll in terms of concerns, and so we're addressing that issue in most of these countries. In terms of the Philippines, in August we launched something we call the SURGE program, which does exactly some of the things you talked about. It works with the local governments in terms of helping them better organize the way they handle land titles from a programmatic view.
Yeah, even if you've got land title, if armed thugs with political support can deprive you of the use of your land, force you to sell, there's a problem. But I'm going to move on to another issue. Mr. Russell, our trade deficit with Japan is enormous. It's often not talked about because it is smaller than the trade deficit we have with China. Part of the reason for that deficit is explicit, direct, open currency manipulation by the Japanese. Are we doing anything, and do you predict that next year the trade deficit will be lower than this year? So are we doing anything, and is it going to be successful in reducing the deficit?
Well, with all due respect, Congressman Sherman, I'll leave the issue of currency to the Department of the Treasury, and I'll stay out of the predictive business.
But you're willing to advocate for the role of the U.S. Trade Representative, but you won't go on. Okay. Please proceed.
The Japanese government has...
But wait a minute, I'm doing it. How can you possibly advocate for a trade deal on the one hand and be and have no opinion on currency manipulation on the other? I mean, if I could see you saying you're not going to talk about trade and you're not going to talk about currency, but you're talking about trade and you're not talking about currency.
Well, what I will talk about is America's national interest. And we have
your testimony has been that this is a good trade deal for working American families, and yet you have no opinion on trade. I want to go on to just one last thing as my time expires, and that is, we will sanctimoniously and with great hubris tell everybody in Asia that we're going to teach them about democracy, and yet you know and I know that the plan of the administration is to sneak this trade deal through the United States Congress during a lame duck session. And I would hope that you would respond just for the record as to how it's going to undercut our ability to be an example of democracy if we use chicanery to pass the one thing through our democracy that Asian countries are looking at. They will watch us as we sneak it through in the dead of night, and then next year the State Department will be lecturing them about democracy. So I'd hope you'd respond for the record on that, because I see my time has expired.
I categorically reject the assumptions that underlie your question.
Well, if the assumptions are wrong, can you promise me that the administration will not use the lame duck session to try to pass a trade deal that they can't pass through a democratic body in any other way?
What we have done, and the effort that I have been a part of, is to create a transparent and high standard agreement that opens the door for U.S. businesses.
Mr. Russell, if I
to
can interrupt and
trade
reclaim
with
my time.
lower tariffs.
Mr. Russell, you love this agreement so much that you're part of an administration that will use chicanery to pass it. And then you tell us that's okay because it's a really lovable agreement. That's no way to show democracy to the world. It's not
Congressman,
like
I have
you
a
can
very-
use underhanded chicanery to thwart democracy, but only for a really, really good purpose.
Congressman, I have a very robust toolkit of diplomatic resources, but underhanded chicanery does not.
If
number
we
among
use
them.
underhanded chicanery to pass this trade deal, which is the one most visible thing America will do in affecting the Pacific region, they will watch what we do, they'll watch how we do it, and if we use chicanery to pass it and then tell them that democracy should be skirted around if you have a really good reason, then I do not think we'll be effective advocates for democracy in Asia.
Congressman, I'm proud of America's record as an advocate for democracy, and I am proud of the TPP agreement that this administration has negotiated.
I hope we can be proud of the process through which it's submitted to Congress, and I yield back.
Well, I don't think that the administration is going to be given charge of the congressional schedule. I don't think Mitch McConnell or Paul Ryan will give that up.
Mr. Chairman, under the Trade Promotion Authority Act, it is the president who determines the entire schedule. He submits it, and then we have to vote on it within 90 days. Or I believe it's 90, it could be 60. So we have, through legislation, which I opposed, given the executive branch control of our schedule when it comes to voting on this agreement. And I fear, and I've given the administration a chance to quench those, to douse those fears, that chicanery will be used in the timing of the voting on this deal.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming to this this hearing. We really appreciate it. Appreciate all your hard work and the good things that you're doing in the region. Thank you very much, and this committee is now adjourned.